Good morning, everybody. It's Shanda Sumpter with Coffee with Shanda, 6 a.m. live over here. And I am super excited to bring my new friend, Ben Hardy. He wrote the book, Willpower Doesn't Work. And we're excited to kind of jump into this book. So, Ben Hardy, thanks for being here today. You've been just a blessing to our community and helping us with so many different things. And this is a big, stop hitting your camera. This is a big topic that you and I have talked about behind closed doors that I'm excited about talking about now, which is this whole concept around willpower doesn't work. Why did you write this book, and what do you mean by that title?
I wrote this book because I had a few really powerful experiences. So I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old, and my father ended up becoming a meth addict. And my mom was trying to run a company, and so she was very busy, and basically I lost all stability. And so what did that result in? Me barely graduating from high school, and a year after
Oh,
playing World of Warcraft. Sorry, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, no. I think he just disconnected. Okay, I'm hoping he's going to reconnect right back up. So while he's reconnecting back up, let me share something that he shared behind the scenes with me before we jumped on. I was asking him, oh, here he comes. Here he comes. There you go. You're back. Yeah, you're back.
Sorry, I don't know what just happened.
That's okay.
So a year after high school, I found myself playing World of Warcraft all day, eating pizza, drinking Mountain Dew, and I was like, how the heck did this become my life? Like, I was 19 years old, and my life was a mess. And if you looked at a person like me, Shanda, a 19-year-old kid playing video games all day, like overweight, just unhealthy, like what would you think of that kid?
Unfortunately, they're probably heading towards a bad future.
Yeah, you'd probably think I was lazy or like, you know what I mean? And you wouldn't realize this backstory that like I had all these traumatic and really rough experiences. And so what happened was I actually started running. And I know that you and I have talked a lot about endurance. I started just running a little bit, just a few miles a day. And I don't know why the screen is like so weird right now.
That's okay.
Oh, there we go. So anyways, I started running a few miles a day, and when I was outside of that, all the triggers in my environment, I finally was able to start thinking about my life, and I realized one day that I needed to totally leave and start over. And so I had a few choices. I could go like to the military, or I could go like do humanitarian aid or something. I decided to go on a humanitarian mission for a few years. And what was insane was as soon as I left, it was like a switch flipped. I all of a sudden felt all this new ability. I started reading really good books. I was doing really good things, and I was changing. And through the course of a few years, I read well over 100 books, filled stacks of journals, and spent years helping other people. And when I came back to like my life, I was shocked at how everything was the same. All the same people, like my high school friends still talked with the same words. And immediately I could feel like this energy, like everything was the same, and I was going to get sucked back into that if I stayed there. It was freaky. And so I decided to go to school at a different college than my friends and pursue different dreams. And then the more recent experience that I had that really inspired this book was that my wife and I became foster parents of 3 kids. And we had them for 3 years, and we just barely adopted them literally 3 weeks ago. But when we got these kids, you could tell that they were a mess. Like these kids, like our 5-year-old girl would throw chairs and break stuff and freak out. And it was just obvious that these kids came from a bad background. So like their parents gave them cough syrup to put them to bed. They were totally neglected. They didn't go to school. I mean, it was just a mess. And, these kids came from a really bad background. So obviously over the next 3 years, we give these kids Montessori school. We get them into sports. We give them a lot of one-on-one stuff. And these kids change and we change. Because think about it. My wife and I were graduate students. We had never been parents before. And all of a sudden we have these 3 kids. And so, and then I've been studying psychology. So all these experiences showed me that, no amount of willpower on my kids' part could have created the opportunities that they had if they were still in that environment. If they're still sitting there with their parents watching TV all day, not eating good food, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of science at this point in neuroscience that says that your brain literally syncs up to the people's brains around you, and that when you surround yourself with different people, your brain changes in structure. And there's a lot of science in epigenetics now that talks about how literally your biology changes when you change your environment. And so the book is all about how, you know, willpower is a really flawed approach to success or even to change, because it's all about trying to change yourself without realizing that your environment is changing you anyways.
Well, which is interesting because you and I were talking about, I said, does this have to do with, like, for instance, I always notice that people in my programs, there's like the group of people winning, and they're dealing with the same problems, like exact same problems as the people that are not winning. But you can clearly tell the difference in the tribes, right? Like, you got the group that's complaining, bitching, rude, and just really exhausting to be around, right? And then you got the same people who, like, maybe still can't, like, pay their mortgage, or they're still stressed about money or something that's happening in their life, or they're going through a divorce, but they have a different attitude and they hang out together, and then they're my success stories on my stage.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me about why that is. Like, why do they even find each other?
Well, I mean, obviously, you'll congregate with where you're used to. There's an idea in psychology. It's called the Pygmalion Effect. And basically, it means that you surround yourself with people with the same expectations that you have. And so you can, but the cool part is that you can decide that you want to surround yourself with people with different standards, different expectations, different values. And, you know, think about it. For example, you and I, like, we met in a group that was highly selective. We both chose to be in that group because we wanted that group to change our brains and to make us more successful. Yeah. So there's a really cool idea in psychology. And most people have personality backwards, actually. Most people think that it's your personality that creates your behavior. So it's like, oh, you have this personality, so you're going to surround yourself with certain people. But it's actually the type of people that you surround yourself with that changes your personality. So personality is actually a lot more fluid. It's not this fixed entity that's stuck. You know, so Carol Dweck talks about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Well, people in like America and stuff, they think that the personality you're born with is the personality you die with. But there's this idea in psychology, it's called self-signaling. And basically what it means is that who you are, you actually really don't know who you are. You just judge yourself based on how you act. So like right now, like I know that you're on the West Coast and that you're awake at 5:30 in the morning, you know, doing these videos, and it's amazing. And so I might think to myself, well, wow, Shanda's just this crazy person who just does this, and I can't be like that. But what the research says is no, the reason why you see yourself as a morning person is because at some point in time you started waking up early in the morning. And then so it's not your personality that shapes your behavior, it's actually your behavior that shapes your personality. And so you can change your personality and how you think and act, and you can do it on a brain level as well, just by deciding those are the kind of people I want to be like and be around. So I'm going to start going over there, and then just naturally your brains synergize, they sync up, and you start acting like them, and you change your identity. So I think just the first idea is you just need to decide who you want to be like and surround yourself with those types of people, and it just changes you on a brain and biological level.
Well, and there's a lot of truth to that, because I used to struggle around getting up really early in the morning. I mean, it was a challenging thing. And in fact, Coffee with Shanda was part of my accountability of being like the person I wanted to be like, and created the accountability of showing up here at 6 a.m. So it's interesting you say that. Okay, so what do most people need to know about willpower to be able to, or the non-willpower, to be able to get the results that they want in life?
Yeah. One quick thought is I think it's funny that you created this program, literally Coffee with Shanda, as a tool or an accountability source to keep you waking up. That's really what you eliminated willpower. Like literally, you created a situation where you have to be here. You created a condition of necessity. That's the smartest way that people do it, is they put themselves in positions, or they create circumstances where they have to do what they want to do. That's the best way to do it. So willpower happens when a few things are in place. Number one, you haven't actually decided what you want to do. So like the Harvard business professor, his name is Clayton Christensen, he says 100% commitment is easier than 98% commitment. If you're 98% committed, then you're not actually sure what you're going to do in every situation. So like Michael Jordan, he said, once I made a decision, I never thought about it again. So If you have to use willpower, it's because you actually don't know what you're going to do. If you've made the decision and you're firm on it, then you don't need to use willpower. It's like, no, I'm not going to eat the donut. Like, I've already decided. Doesn't matter what you're going to do in one situation or so. So willpower comes, number one, from not making a choice. Number two is that you're not clear on the why behind the choice. The more powerful the why and the conviction behind the choice, the more, the decision is just already made because you believe in it. Can
I ask you a quick question? What if somebody's having a hard time even making the decision in the first place?
Yeah. So that's actually the next one. So how do you get, so this is cool because it relates a lot of science, but it also relates a lot of spirituality. It connects them together. So how do you actually get yourself to make a big decision? Let's just say you want to start becoming more successful. You want to become a writer, or you want to get really fit and run a marathon. How do you actually get yourself to do that? Well, there's a lot of science on how when you start investing money into something, your brain changes. So like I've spent my whole PhD studying the difference between wannabe entrepreneurs and real entrepreneurs. And the shift that happens is when someone starts investing money in their goal, all of a sudden they start believing that that's who they are. They start not seeing themselves as, oh, I want to do that, but oh, that is me. I'm an entrepreneur. And they become really committed. Like when you start investing money in something, you become committed to it. And it's interesting because I actually recently read the book, The Alchemist. Have you ever read The Alchemist?
Great book.
Well, so listen to this. It's really weird because it's kind of true on a spiritual level as well. So if you've ever read The Alchemist, there's a little boy who's a shepherd boy in the book, and he meets like an African king. And the African king says, I will tell you where your treasure is, but you have to give me 1/10 of your flock. And so the boy says, okay, I want to know where the treasure is. And he already knew that the treasure was at the pyramids in Egypt. So he gave the king 6 of his sheep, which was 1/10. And the king said, all right, you gave me your 6 sheep. Now I will tell you where it's at. It's at the pyramids in Egypt. And you already knew that, but I had you give me your 6 sheep so that you would actually make the decision. And so basically the idea is once you start becoming invested in something, that empowers you to actually make the decision. So if you really want to change your life, you need to start investing money in it, because by investing money in it, all of a sudden you stop holding on to and clinging on to the life you currently have. Like that's where you shift from scarcity to abundance.
So, and that's fascinating to me because it's like, you're right. So when I'm even thinking, like, when you do start investing money, you do decide I am an entrepreneur, for the sake of this show, right? I'm committed, right? And you start identifying with where you spend the money. So that's so interesting. So then, like, what about staying committed?
Yeah, that's good. So that's really, I love your questions because obviously you're really like logical thinker. So the next step is actually the fact that you have to remove everything from your environment that conflicts. So if you actually make a true decision, it's not about your internal.
I just want to write.
Yeah. Well, so think about this. Most people think that commitment is an internal thing. But what did you do? You wanted to commit to waking up early, so you created an external condition that forces you to do it. You've got this show where you've got people watching you. You have to be here. So what real commitment is if you really want to do something, you actually don't leave it up to yourself, because you know that if you leave it up to yourself, you're probably going to fail. So you have to create external defense systems. That's accountability. That's, you have to put external things in place to make sure. You've got to remove things that conflict. You've got to remove, I was talking to JJ Virgin just recently, and like, we were talking about sugar. Like my wife and I, we had our whole family off refined sugar for 2017. And it changed our kids' brains and stuff, which was really cool. And it allowed us to sleep better. But it was really easy because we literally just removed all of the sugar from our house. You know what I mean? And then we made a committed decision together. We had a timeline, and we did it together. That's the difference when you think about willpower, you think about individual, you think about the self, you think about doing it alone. When you don't think about group, you don't think about accountability. You think about, I have to do this versus the world. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so the idea is you want to put all the things in place where you don't have to rely on willpower, where you have group support, where you're surrounded by people who are doing it better than you, and where you've got things in place where you have to do it. So it's really about creating external defense systems so that you don't have to rely on willpower.
Okay, so that first of all, just a takeaway for myself and everybody, like when you're looking at creating something that you want, look at creating, like model what I did with Coffee with Shanda, because Ben just brought that to my awareness that I actually did it like that, but I did do it like that, so I had to show up. So before knowing that willpower didn't work, I eliminated that issue of having to have willpower because I really wanted to connect and give back. And I wanted it to be an early morning thing because I know that many successful people get up very early, and it's always been a struggle, and I'm tired of it being a struggle, right? So that's that aspect. And now it's like easy. I just get up. It doesn't matter if it's the weekend. It doesn't matter what it is.
You have to.
I'm up. But now I'm up. Like, I am a morning person. I am up and happy to be up. And the most common thing I get is, oh my God, I can't believe you do that. Right? And it's like, you have no idea how much I get from it. Like confidence and power and like self-love, and like there's all these things that I actually get from it. So I do have a question though. It's like, so I think I heard you say that it's through community that we stay hooked into what we're creating. Did I understand you correctly on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's through community, it's through environment, it's through a lot of things. I mean, you said a lot of cool things just barely. So a lot of people think that it's confidence that creates success, but it's actually success that creates confidence. You know what I mean? Yeah, like you've become this confident person because you started getting these small wins, and you got these small wins because you put yourself in a position where you had to do it. I mean, that's why they say necessity is the mother of invention. And if you look at any really successful person, they do what you've done. They put themselves in a position where they have to go forward. Eben Pagan calls it inevitability thinking. He says you create conditions that make your success inevitable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when it comes to community, one of the things, the hardest thing for everyone to change their environment is the fact, like I just barely talked to Sean Stevenson, for example. He's the famous public speaker. He's really cool. He's a joint friend of ours. And he talked about how recently he realized he wanted to go a lot bigger in his business. And in order to do that, he literally had to change his relationship with his parents because they were involved with his company. And what it ended up having to lead to was that it ended up leading to him having to shatter his relationship with his parents in order for him to go where he needed to go. And that was really painful. But he said it was in that moment that he went from being a boy to a man. And so I think the hardest thing about all of this is the fact. So like I could just tell you, you could change your life by having a positive mindset, you know, but that is really hard. What I'm saying is you literally have to change your environment. You have to change the people around you. You've got to change the expectations, you know. And when you do that, you actually can transform yourself very fast because human beings are very adaptive and very fluid. Our brains are very...
I can hear somebody saying, so what does that mean if I have, by the way, Sean Stevenson, just so everybody knows, it's like when he's saying shatter the relationship, they were working within his company, and for him to go to the next level, there were conversations that were hard conversations that he had to have, right? So, but moving, like, what about people who are like, okay, like, I have a negative mom, or I've got like a spouse at home that is like, doesn't think like me as an entrepreneur. I want to grow here, and they're like really here. What's like a piece of advice that you would give them? Because what, are they supposed to get a divorce and leave them? Like, what's your advice here?
Yeah. So obviously, no, the goal would not be a divorce. You know what I mean? The goal is this. Like I was recently asked the question, what happens if there's two people who smoke and one of them decides they want to stop smoking, but the other one is not going to stop? And so like you live with this person who's smoking, there's smoke in your environment, etc. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tough. How do you actually do that? And so number one, the only way to actually make it happen is that you have to have a huge built-in accountability system around you outside of that group. But also, like, let's just say the husband like keeps smoking. It's not going to work if he doesn't fully support her in that decision. You know, he has to actually figure out how to change his behavior too. Like if this, let's just say the wife's going to quit smoking and the husband is not, well, he's going to have to adjust his behavior if she's actually going to succeed. He has to be just as committed to her decision as she is. And so if he really loves her, he's going to have to change his behavior around smoking. He can't do it in the house. He's got to do it in other places. You know,
so it's agreements. They're creating agreements together.
Yeah.
To move forward.
Yeah, and if so the relationship has to change. It's not like he necessarily has to change dramatically, but he has to respect the decision. And if that doesn't happen, there's going to be huge conflict in the environment where one person's trying to go one way and the other person's not supporting them going that way. And it's not a give and take, but it's just like one person saying no. And so that person needs to change that relationship so it works for both people. And then they need an enormous amount of help outside of that relationship. They need to continue. So one thing that Dan Sullivan says is he says it's better to surround yourself with people who remind you of your future than people who remind you of your past. You know what I mean? Because who you surround yourself, you grow into. And if you keep surrounding yourself with people who remind you of your past, you're going to stay stuck in your old patterns. But if you surround yourself with people who are where you want to be, so, you know, just in this case with the person who smokes, like, you have to surround yourself with mostly people who don't smoke. You know, obviously you're not going
to. Most of my friends are people who are married now versus and have kids because the season that we're in our life. And so it just shifts. You gravitate towards that. And I'll say like these agreements that you have to make, as like the smoking example, like these all come from your inner leadership to be able to even learn how to have these conversations, right? Because often when you have these, especially when you're changing, one of the things that I had was, one of the things that really hurt me when I grew my company is when I had my son, a really close friend of mine coached with me, and she actually got upset with me because I didn't return her phone call within 2 hours. And I just given birth. I have like hundreds and hundreds of clients, you know what I mean? And they're not info clients, info product clients. They're actually mentorship clients. You know what I mean? And it's like that I couldn't live into her expectation of shifting right away. And so I had a choice at that point. Do I go into conflict, or do I lead the conversation where I go in and I create a new agreement with my friend? Do you get what I'm saying? And so will you actually, because I think this is going to be amazing for your people, will you actually explain how you did that? Will you actually break down a little bit how you had that conversation? You don't need to go into the details of it. Yeah, I mean, I can't right now because we're ending coffee with Shanda, but yeah, that's definitely something that I can do. We train that in a leadership training that we actually do, but because it's not a quick answer. But at the end of the day, the first step in that is I was clean. If you're emotionally triggered when you go into an agreement or a conversation, I'm not driving my agenda, right? I just know that my focus is on, I want my friend to feel good, I want to feel good, and this is what I'm able to do in this relationship, versus trying to people please or feel guilty or angry and get mad about it, right? And so there's the genuine feeling of hurt that you process, but before you go into creating agreements to change your environment, it's really critical that you first are coming from a very clean place, so that A, you're not pushing an agenda to be right about something, and then B, that you're committed to a win-win versus a committed to just you winning and the other person changing, right? And so all of those dynamics come into play. And I noticed that, that's a huge factor, even creating the environment and the culture of my community. Do you know what I mean? Like we just did a whole training for one of our groups. We have 265 people in it. And I asked a good friend of ours, Jason Fladlin, to come in, who's, as you know, the best trainer in webinars right now in the world. He's incredible. And I'm studying his stuff. And I thought, you know what, let me help him come in and train our clients. So I come in and I have him train our clients for 90 minutes. And I'm not kidding you, there's a whole group of people who are just like, holy shit, this is amazing. And then there's a group of people in the chat that are bitching and complaining about him talking too fast. Now, you and I know Jason Fladlin is really smart. Like, you guys are both that way.
He's a computer brain.
He's a computer brain. So he's like, when I study his stuff, I stop it, I do it, then I hit play again. Like, I've created an ability to consume his information so that I can leverage off his smarts to get ahead in business, right? So now you've got this group of people who are in the environment and they're all in the chat, right? And then there's the group of people outside the chat that are winning, that are posting in the Facebook group and sending me private messages. And they're like, I can't believe that these people are complaining, right? And then I had phoned Jason yesterday morning. I said, Jason, I know that you're not going to coach this community. Would you make them an offer? He goes, well, they're not really our ideal client. There's nowhere for them to go with us. He goes, but you know what? He goes, I can give them our templates, like our product that you're studying. And I was like, awesome. I go, so I don't want anything for it. Could you just what you would normally pay an affiliate, a partner, instead of giving me money, would you actually just give them even more of a discount off of it? Let me give it to them. And he's like, sure. So that was 3 hours before he went on. He did it. He made the offer. And then people were super mad. And I'm like, whoa, just wait for a second. Notice that you've got this tribe winning, super appreciative, who can't understand why you're not, and you're triggered because you've hit a wall that you can't understand him, or he's speaking too fast, or you're overwhelmed. And the way your character shows up in a breakdown is to fight, is to blame, is to attack, is to make wrong, and I'm like, that's not getting you anywhere. You know what I mean? So like when I look at your book, Willpower Doesn't Work, and it's so much about this whole conversation around like your environment and community and who you spend your time with, and getting out of the rat race of just continuing to buy more products and services and wondering why you're not getting the results. You have to read a book like this. You have to develop your leadership. You've got to arm your tool belt. There's not just one thing that makes the whole thing come together. You got to arm your tool belt and give up the idea that you're ever going to arrive. You're never going to arrive, meaning that you're going to keep having these visions and these dreams to grow bigger. And there's always going to be these walls of frustration and challenges coming forward. So Ben, where do they get a copy of your book? Can they get it on Amazon?
Yep.
Okay, so I recommend that everybody go get this book. I know a bunch of people in our community have recently got this book as well. Share this broadcast with people who need this. I think that, more people get to jump into the tribe of what's working. More people get to jump into the tribe of transforming their trauma and transforming, their backgrounds and their character when they hit hard times. They get to transform that. And books like this make a difference for us to just get the tools that we need to jump into the crew and relate with the crew that are winning. So there's even a crew winning and losing in my crew. And who I hang out with is the people who are winning. And it's intimidating. And they're better than me, and they're stronger than me. And when you develop these type of understandings of what it takes to get there, you realize, wow, I don't have to feel that way anymore. I could actually just start adopting some of their behaviors and allowing their mindsets to really change the way that I think and my brain and the way that my brain operates so that I can be successful too. So you guys, that's how I do it. I hope you'll do it too. Ben, any final last words that you want to share?
No, I think you're beautiful, Shanda. I think you're amazing. And just thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah, thank you. All right, you guys, we'll end on that. We'll see you tomorrow morning with 6 a.m. Coffee with Shanda. Thank you. Please share this broadcast with someone who needs it. I'll talk to you soon.